This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Bruschi.
The Gabby Petito case is something that's been getting more attention back in the news again, of course, with the Landry family and the Landrys being a little bit elusive. Okay, more than elusive during this whole thing, especially going all the way back to when Gabby was missing, Bryan was back, and they decided to go on a camping trip. And then Bryan went off into the woods and obviously killed himself. There's a lot to be discussed there. That letter coming up into conversation. We're going to talk about all that right now with Scott Roeder of Evidence Room. He's a forensic reconstructionist and very good at what he does. Scott, let's go all the way back to the initial moments in this case where Gabby was missing and Bryan was at home or camping, and his family just didn't say anything. They didn't even communicate with the other family of Gabby, the missing girlfriend of their son. It just all was very, very bizarre at that moment in time of how could you not have the humanity to do or to not communicate at that moment? What's your take on that initially?
Well, certainly the parents are not guilty of the murder, right?
Sure.
But they are the parents of a murderer. And that puts a parent in a very difficult decision. I think we can all sit here, not being in that situation and say, I would have turned my kid in right out of the get. But
Sure.
When you're a parent, you have children, don't be so sure you're going to turn your kid in that fast.
Yeah.
And I think that what the parents were going through was just simple battle of conscience versus battle of their obligation as a parent. And I think they were just buying their son a little bit of time so that he could kill himself in the woods like he did. And I guess I can't really blame them. It's hard to blame a parent to try to protect their son, no matter how guilty they are.
Sure.
We're all, just like I said, human beings. And I think maybe their silence and their bizarre behavior was just giving their kid a head start so that he could kill himself on his own terms. And that's not fair because she didn't get to go out on her own terms, and he deserved to go to stand trial for what he did. But he took the coward's way out, and they bought him time so he could do that.
But what a bizarre thing to do. I mean, if you're a parent, and you love your child enough to not turn them in, that almost seems to be like an even crazier concept than just hiding your child from being caught, of saying, and then willingly, like, okay, yeah, you go in the woods, you're going to kill yourself, we'll see you later. I wondered, do you think they knew that he was intending to do this, or do you think he played it off as, I need some time in the woods by myself to collect myself or kind of figure things out? Do you think that they knew he was going to kill himself off in the woods?
Well, I think there might be some plausible deniability there. In that I'm sure when he came back to his parents, he said, hey, I didn't do this. She just has disappeared and so on and so forth. And they probably knew in their heart of hearts that he was guilty, but that gave them enough pause to give him a head start. And if you think about it from a parent's perspective, and it's a bit macabre, but these are macabre subjects. Either, if you're a parent, do you want your kid sitting at 29 years old in prison for 70 years, 50 years until he's dead in prison with all the crazy stuff that happens in there? Or do you allow him to get the head start to take himself out as quickly as possible without that extended pain and suffering? Because that's what prison is meant for.
Yeah.
It's not rehabilitation. Nobody comes out of prison a better man.
No.
Prison is meant to punish and hurt you. There's no luxuries in prison, of course, unless you're Ghislaine Maxwell, where you can do yoga and tennis and meditation and so on and so forth. But for the criminals that are put together in these state facilities, prison is hard time. It's meant to be torture and punishment, and that's what it is. And he had the option to either live his life in torture and confinement or take the easy way out and kill himself. And I think that's what the parents were wrangling with.
It is very macabre, but I think you're right. If you look at it almost from a perspective of like assisted suicide, where, you know, someone has a debilitating disease. It's not going to get better. It's just going to be painful and horrible for however much longer they have to live. And sometimes people say, you know what, I don't want to do that. I want out. I don't want to suffer. It's almost the same sort of thing of what would have been going down with this if they were all aware of his crime of killing Gabby Petito.
Right.
What's your take?
I put it this way, Tony.
Yeah.
Let me just add one more thing, Tony.
Yeah.
I put it this way. I always told my kids that if I had, God forbid, Lord, please bless me, make sure I don't get this. I don't want to give myself bad luck. But if I ever had an incurable brain disease, instead of going through all the suffering and expense, I'd jump out of an airplane at about 8,000, 10,000 feet and have a great ride down to the bottom without pulling the chute. At least that's what I think I would want to do instead of going through all that suffering. And I think maybe that's the mentality that was going on here.
But then somebody has to scrape you up. You know, that's unless you just go somewhere where you're like, don't scrape me. I don't want to traumatize anybody else. Just don't scrape me. Got to think about that part,
well,
too.
I mean, yeah, right. You forget about the little details, right?
Yeah. What's your take on the letter that we've not seen all of the text of, the burn after reading letter that the mother allegedly had written to her son? The story obviously goes that this was written far before these things happened. It was kind of tongue-in-cheek. It was based off of kind of just macabre humor. And I get that. I have macabre humor. So when I read that, my first thought was, well, it's based off of kind of like what you see in movies and books. And I think it actually is directly off of some book. The content, not though. But it is kind of the, if you find yourself here, get a shovel. I don't know how in detail it went. I don't believe the letter actually is a guide to murdering someone and how to truly bury a body other than have a shovel and dig a hole. Beyond that, unless it like truly is a guide to murdering, I don't know that it really is much of meaning other than it just the timing and the aesthetics of it look horrible.
Well, it doesn't look good.
No.
That's for sure. But, in my business, I deal with homicide investigations and officer-involved shootings and suicides every single day as part of my paid 9 to 5. And we have gallows humor.
Yeah.
We try not to take things personally. We make jokes from time to time, I think more for our own sanity, because if you get personally attached to some of these cases, it wears on you and it's tough. And it wears on your perspective on other human beings. So, we try to just, tunnel vision and do our work and make some jokes from time to time. None of those, you want those out in public, but, those are little relievers to break the tension in the office. But for a mother and a son to do something like that and having that kind of correspondence, it does show, maybe a little bit of an off mindset. I don't want to judge the mom on a letter without knowing the full context and so on and so forth. But I think I'd sum it up by saying it doesn't look good considering the circumstances.
No, it certainly does not at all. I think seeing the contents of it would likely clear more of this up, but that's still being held on to. I imagine at some point it will see the light of day. But I'd be very curious to know what exactly it is, because some places are saying, oh, it's literally an offering to the son of, I will help you bury this body. And others say it's just very tongue-in-cheek. Here, I hope you survive life, and here's some tips for surviving. I guess without saying it's hard to really know the answer to that. As far as responsibility goes, though, and granted, I understand, everything you're saying earlier, until you're in that position as a parent, and nobody would want to be in that position as a parent, how one would react to finding out that your child killed somebody, either accidentally, on purpose, whatever it may be, and then what do you do? Because this person is going to be found guilty of that crime, and not saying anything, allowing the investigation, because that's the big hang-up point that I think the Petito family have is, you all already knew she was dead, and you let us sit here for how long hoping and praying that she would come back, and you didn't communicate anything, but you had this knowledge. How dare you?
Well, maybe they did or maybe they didn't. I mean, we don't know if he made a full admission to his parents. Like I said, he could have, claimed that it was an accident and asked for a head start because he wasn't ready to deal with the police. I would go a little bit easy on mom and dad there because what a tough position to be in.
It is.
I don't want to, make excuses for anybody for anything. If you know the truth, you got to say the truth. And I'm a firm believer in that. But what a tough spot to be in, Tony. You know what I mean?
At the same point, they went on a camping trip, like after the fact. Like he got back, girlfriend's missing. Hey, let's go camping. That to me is almost ridiculously, that's more than tone deaf. That's almost, let's spit in the face of, well, your girlfriend's missing. Hey, let's get those baked beans on the campfire and tell some stories tonight.
Right. Yeah, that doesn't look good. Not a good look. Not a good look.
Yeah.
That's not a good look for sure.
It just makes me wonder if they had the ability or the mindset to do that. I don't know. It speaks to their personality. And I'm not saying that they knew more or didn't know more. It's a weird personality defect to be able to do something like that when someone that close to you, someone who even lived with them for a period of time, is missing and you don't know where they're at, allegedly.
Well, all I can say is that, and this is I don't want to slander the parents, but they've obviously made some big mistakes in raising their child to have them turn out like this. But for the most part, apple tree.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Bruschi.
That it is. I want you to check out Scott's podcast as well, Crime Scene Time Machine. You can get that wherever you download podcasts. We just put a really interesting piece up about Jeffrey Epstein and his death in prison from his perspective, and dives really deep. Do go and check that out. Be sure to press subscribe on this podcast wherever you download it so you don't miss any breaking updates and discussions on the cases that we're following for you. You can get an ad-free version if you'd like that experience on Apple Podcasts. Even try it for 3 days free right now. We do appreciate that support. I am Tony Bruschi. Stay with us.